Hello and welcome to another TLDR EU video. It's no secret that the end of the transition period is approaching and approaching fast. While both sides are for now continuing to negotiate, the risk of a no deal continues to loom over both the UK and EU. So much so that the European Commission have now published contingency plans and recommendations in preparation for a complete breakdown in talks. So in this video, we'll look at exactly what the Commission is planning to put into place, and what this tells us about the current state of negotiations. The negotiation deadline is not the only one closing in though. Christmas is also round the corner. So I've got some good news. The TLDR store is still making deliveries before Christmas to a whole bunch of countries. So if you know a friend who'd love a Countries with Shoes pin badge, or even one of our Brexit colouring books, which take you through the whole Brexit timeline in 21 images, then now's the time to buy. The link to the store can be found in the description. To tackle the immediate elephant in the room, while these plans have been published in between high-level talks between Boris Johnson and von der Leyen, and the hard deadline of Sunday they imposed, the Commission was always scheduled to release these plans on Thursday, come what may, after some quite significant pressure from EU countries. So this was always going to happen. In the words of Politico, the Commission has waited to launch the legislation, fearing that it would send a political signal to London that Brussels had lost faith in the talks. Anyway, so what has the EU published? Well, alongside a typical press release, the Commission published a number of targeted contingency measures covering 4 key areas, all of which were expected to encounter the most significant disruption from a no-deal scenario. These being basic air connectivity, aviation safety, basic road connectivity, and fisheries. All 4 areas crucially don't have a pre-existing international fallback. For instance, no contingency plan had to be put into place for trade, as the UK and EU are both members of the World Trade Organization, so they would just follow WTO rules instead. A similar logic applies to police and security cooperation too. However, there's no such international fallback solution for the likes of aviation and fisheries, so that's what the EU have tried to put in place here. The contingency measures are explicit in what they can and cannot do. Notably, they cannot provide continuity or replicate benefits of EU membership, and they're being put into place not as permanent solutions, but as transitory solutions, to avoid or mitigate the disproportionate disrupts relating from a no-deal scenario. So let's take each issue in turn, starting with basic air connectivity. Given the UK and EU's proximity, hundreds if not thousands of British flights fly over and make stops in EU territories and airports every day, and vice versa. In the absence of an agreement, UK flights to the EU and EU flights to the UK would most likely be grounded. In turn, the Commission is set to allow for up to 6 months UK carriers to fly across the territory of the Union without landing, make stops, and perform scheduled and non-scheduled international passenger and cargo services between points in the UK and points in the EU. This is all conditional on the UK conferring equivalent rights to European air carriers, something which appears to be a given at this point. Simply allowing air carriers access to your airspace isn't the end of the story, however. The aircraft ultimately used still needs to be certified for safety purposes in order to be allowed to enter your airspace. Assuming no deal, after the transition period, certain aviation products would lose certification from the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. In turn, the Commission is proposing that aviation products and designs certified by the EASA before the end of the transition period continue to apply without disruption. On road connectivity, it's clear that the Commission is expecting some quite significant disruption, saying that in the absence of an agreement on a future partnership, there will be no basis in union law for the provision of road freight transport services between the UK and member states. The existing system would not be sufficient to carry goods by road and would result in serious disruptions, potentially even threatening public order. In turn, the Commission is proposing, more or less, a continuation of the status quo for a maximum period of 6 months. While not rectified through the measures put in place now, the Commission touches on the situation with the Channel Tunnel. Specifically, in the absence of contingency measures, the operation of the Channel Tunnel would have to be suspended. However, in light of the economic importance of the tunnel, on the 27th of November, the Commission adopted contingency measures that last until other arrangements have been put in place. Finally, let's tackle fisheries, which at one point was the biggest sticking point in negotiations. The fishing sector is important for both sides, from the position of sovereignty to the economic impact it would have for coastal communities. In turn, to avoid cliff-edge destruction of these communities, the Commission is proposing an extension on fishing authorisations until the end of 2021. That would allow for reciprocal access by EU and UK vessels to each other's waters. This is, however, conditional on the UK accepting and reciprocating the measure, something which doesn't look guaranteed. All of these measures have, however, come too late for some member states, who took it upon themselves to set up certain domestic contingency plans. We'll zoom in on France, Germany, and the Netherlands. Let's start with France, as they're the country who didn't rule out vetoing a deal should they consider it too bad to accept. Since September last year, France began the recruitment of 700 extra customs staff, and spent €50 million on expanding port infrastructure, including Calais, which is one of the main entry points into the EU from Britain. Plus, it was also preparing extra border posts for checking in goods from the UK in the case of no-deal Brexit. Furthermore, France has prepared an emergency law which authorises the government to enact measures in case of a no-deal without needing to consult Parliament, so to swiftly respond to crisis situations that might emerge. British citizens in the country are offered until the 1st of July 2021 to apply for an extension to their residence permit, but they may stay regardless up until that date. They've also launched a special website for all kinds of questions that businesses and individuals might have regarding any kind of Brexit. As for Germany, the federal government has prepared its customs system with over 700 new employees. British citizens in Germany also have the right to stay there until the 30th of June 2021. If they want to stay longer, they must present their current residence permit in order to receive an extension. Furthermore, Germany's passed a law that says that any federal law referring to EU member states will also apply to the United Kingdom. As for the German economy, a study by the Leibniz Institute for Economic Research and the Martin Luther University concluded that more than 100,000 German jobs are likely to be lost in the case of a no deal. Therefore, German businesses have been provided with a lot of information from the government, helping them prepare for matters such as standards compliance, trade, and customs, explaining how to do business with the UK in a no-deal scenario, in order to try and protect jobs and businesses. In the Netherlands, concerns of a no-deal Brexit are very high. In fact, based on a recent investigation conducted by the universities of Rotterdam, Sheffield and Birmingham, together with the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency, the Netherlands is expected to be the EU country that loses out most in a no-deal scenario. At the moment, only a third of Dutch companies claim to feel sufficiently prepared for a no-deal scenario. As for the Dutch government, preparations have been put into place with regards to various areas, including visa regulations, qualifications, and financial regulations for citizens. This includes the right for British citizens resident in the Netherlands to be granted a temporary visa for 15 months, allowing them time to apply for a full residence visa. As for border controls, the government has expanded its customs staff, with 321 of them expected to be available by the end of March. Although 928 are expected to be needed, so that's a pretty big shortfall. But fortunately, the blue Brexit monster has been going around the port of Rotterdam since 2019, warning the Dutch of the impact of Brexit. So what could possibly go wrong? These national piecemeal approaches have actually come under fire from the Commission, with the FT writing, "The European Commission warned national governments not to undermine the European position that only the bare minimum of contingency measures should be put in place. The issue being that for national governments, doing just the bare minimum is akin to simply taking your foot off the accelerator when you're about to crash. You're invariably going to want to use your brakes." Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, is careful to imply that these measures, despite their timing, do not in any way signal a loss in faith in negotiations, stressing that negotiations are still ongoing, However, given the end of the transition period is very near, there's no guarantee that if and when an agreement is found, it can enter into force on time. So, according to her, these provisions are necessary to be put into place, regardless of a deal. Before we end though, we should briefly discuss the EU's budget. That's because each year the UK contributed some €7.5 billion to the EU budget, which was consistently more than it received. All the way back in March, EU leaders first disagreed about how this gap should be filled, and if it should be filled in the first place. The issue of EU finances was then aggravated by the economic setback as a result of the pandemic, and the veto of the EU budget by Hungary and Poland over the inclusion of rules connecting funding to conditions on the rule of law and democracy in each country. Fortunately for the EU, recent messages show that both Hungary and Poland are about to lift their veto on the €750 billion EU budget, even with the rule-related clauses intact. In return, they're said to have demanded that any cuts would first have to be reviewed by the Court of Justice of the European Union, and that they could only be imposed for rule of law breaches that threaten the EU's financial interests specifically. Details on this end and whether leaders will actually agree to these proposals will emerge in the coming days. So what do you think? Is this a sign that the EU's losing faith in a fully fledged deal? Or is it just them preparing for whatever might come their way? As always, be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a video like this. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that is in the description.